Thank you for joining us tonight at the BCS Fintech event, as well as some insights on APIs in the fintech ecosystem. I'm Unzube Ufodike, welcoming you to this London Central Branch event. As you can see from the screen, that's the agenda for tonight. We did have a keynote, the Global Innovation Manager of Swift, and unfortunately Nkiru had a last-minute work conflict that prevents her from joining us tonight. However, she was so kind as to send some notes, and we had a debrief before this session. I'll just run through some of those in my opening remarks. So without further ado, the essence of this panel really is talking about the API space, and industry collaboration is a critical piece to ensure longevity and growth of the financial services ecosystem and fostering financial inclusion. So when we talk about ecosystems, what do we actually mean? That's a collaboration between the governments, the banks, the financial services, companies, and fintechs, creating that robust, healthy ecosystem that exchanges ideas. This collaboration is not just a nice to have, but an essential tool for us to grow the bottom line of the economy, create new opportunities, and foster growth. Ecosystems are not just local, but global. And we need to consider what each of the ecosystem players do to ensure continuity within their respective ecosystems. So another key thing to remember when it comes to ecosystems are that standards and regulations such as open banking and API standardization fosters innovation and scale to better serve consumers, because it's all about the consumers. And further investments into regulations through open API standards and secure data sharing will enable us to better solve the unmet needs of the individuals. So those are some high-level talking points that address the APIs within the fintech ecosystem. Without further ado, I'll hand over to my colleague, Michaela Benjamin, who is our moderator for this evening session, to introduce the panelists and moderate the Q&A. So over to you, Michaela. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nzube. Good evening, everybody. So I think we'll start. We've got a great lineup in terms of our speakers and our panelists today. So if we start with Kay Akinwunmi, who's the CEO of Zazuu. If you can just tell us a little bit about yourself, Kay, and about Zazuu and what it does for its customers.
Hi, everyone. It's good to be here. My name is Kay. I'm a co-founder and CEO at Zazuu. Zazuu is a marketplace for the 25 million African migrants living in diasporas to search, compare, and send money to Africa. What we essentially do is basically save people money. Our customers save up to 150% compared to the traditional providers. And on the provider side, we work with MTOs such as Zemo, TransferWise, and WorldRemit to connect them to their customers. We've been around for a bit. We launched just in July, and we've been growing month to month since then. We are in the process of launching our end-to-end platform, which is a big deal for us, and I'd be happy to talk to you guys a little bit more about that later on. I'm looking forward to you all learning from the rest of the panels today.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, Kay. That's a great introduction, and good to see that you're saving people so much money going forward. Good to hear about the launch. I was going to move on now to Karan Shanmugarajah. So he is CEO and co-founder of a company called WealthKernel. So can you tell us a bit about the company, Karan?
Yeah, well, thank you everyone for attending and having me on your panel. So yeah, my name is Karan. I'm one of the co-founders of WealthKernel. What WealthKernel is it's an API platform that provides other businesses the infrastructure that they need to provide savings, investments, and pension solutions to consumers in the UK and Europe. So we're fundamentally like a plumbing company. I talk about it's the boring stuff, it's the back end stuff all available through this beautiful API platform that we spent the last few years building. So I'd love to speak more about it, but I think I'll keep it relatively brief.
Okay. Oh, so plumbing to make it wealth management more accessible to everybody rather than just a typical investor, you would say then?
Yeah, like when we talk about what we build, we focus on the infrastructure for the bottom 70%, I would say, of society. That tends to be younger people who haven't traditionally been the clients of the private banks. These are the people that are using apps or sort of discovering investing or discovering savings for the first time. So when we do everything, it's focusing on people that have really small sums of money, and that infrastructure that in the past has been a friction to prevent it or has resulted in higher fees. And that's we have different businesses that enable ethical savings. We have one firm looking at the African market specifically. We have one that's focused on the halal market. We have a variety of firms, one helping people save money for their first home. So our infrastructure is used by many different firms in many different ways. We just worry about making the pipes available.
Okay, so a variety of different methodologies there to help people save money from yourself and from Kay. And yeah, onto yourself, Yorena. So you're the co-founder of Kashmir, which I believe is a great way for, I guess, Gucci meets financial education. Can you tell us a bit more about Kashmir and how it works and how you came up with the idea? I think you just on. Okay, Ace.
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, I'm Yorena. I'm the founder of Kashmir, which is a social savings app that helps young female aspirational consumers save up for their favorite luxury products and experiences in a much more financially responsible and sustainable manner. So obviously now that we live in an era of social media and Instagram and a lot of young people wanting to keep up with their favorites like influencers and so on, and couple that with the easy access to consumer debt from things like Klarna. It's very easy for a lot of young people to get into debt in order to keep up with social media. So, there's research to show that 7 in 10 young people are getting into debt to fund their lifestyle. And obviously this isn't sustainable. So I decided to build a platform that's a much more engaging way for them to, still have access to the fashion and beauty products that they want, but doing it in a way that they're more conscious about it and saving up towards it rather than getting themselves into more debt.
Okay, so they get the benefit of saving and actually getting the products that they want at the same time then. So very nice product there in Kashmir. So again, thank you very much, guys, for joining us tonight. I think the main kind of focus points, and again, thank you for giving the introductions, is just to understand a little bit more about how fintech and ecosystems are going to be assisting you guys going forward with regards to your businesses. If we kick off with Kay, how would you say that APIs of helping you kind of bundle, connect with your customers to just kind of innovate, really?
Yeah, thanks for that. Well, one of the ways that we are looking at APIs, or should I say, the perspective that we share in terms of the fintech environment and how Open API really could help, more specifically, the remittance world a bit more fair to our customer segments. But before that, actually, let me give a bit of context. As of today, Africa is still the most expensive continent to send money to in the world. Fintech has been a thing for quite some time now. I would say for about 10 years or so. By the likes of Azimo and TransferWise actually sort of kicked off this sort of fintech revolution in the remittance world, and they're doing amazingly well from, I guess, sort of a technology perspective. There's been amazing innovation in that space. However, the cost savings from tech hasn't necessarily passed down to customers. Now, what we envision as to the reason why remittance is still high for this continent, essentially there is a regulator, a collaborator, so to speak, to come into the space and bring everyone together and essentially give customer the power and to have this sort of bird's eye view visibility across all the different sort of players in the space. So really what Zazuu is proposing and what we're building right now, it's something we sort of term as Open Remittance API. And the idea behind this really is to enable the customer to be able to switch from different providers, essentially shop around, and if they want to work or send money with TransferWise today, that's okay. If they want to go with WorldRemit tomorrow, that's okay. But there should be sort of a convenient and easy access to sort of accessing multiple different products and financial services. So really, this is how we sort of look at API from Zazoo's perspective. We're using some interesting products as well. You know, the open banking, which has been it's been amazing for us. I'd say RegTech, which I don't know if that falls under under Open API, but that's essentially been really useful for us from a regulatory perspective to be able to launch in multiple different markets without necessarily going through the headache of signing multiple paperworks and stuff like that. And essentially, we're dealing with one entity, but we were able to launch in multiple jurisdictions. So that's,
thank you very much for that. So you're finding that the open banking side of things is bringing more efficiencies to your business when you're going to new markets then?
Absolutely.
Okay, nice. And I guess on a slightly different note, so obviously Kay's mentioned there the issues they've had with not having one firm regulator within the African markets, which is their focus. How do you find it as well, Karan, in terms of what you've kind of come across? Because obviously it's slightly different type of customer that you'll be dealing with. Have you found the regulators have hindered or kind of assisted you with your kind of products?
Regulator plural, like my real experience of dealing with one regulator, the UK regulator. I'd say it's been a net benefit. I think the UK regulator is probably one of the best. And despite me not having worked with other regulators, when we have interacted with other regulators without mentioning countries, like we've had multiple interactions with them, but never been directly regulated by them. The UK is the framework that the FCA has is just it's head and shoulders better than other regulators. Let me try to quantify that so it's for the audience. Not only are they more they're more open-minded, so they try to understand what you're doing. They're proportionate in their regulation. So if you're a fintech, they're not throwing you the same standards that they've sort of become accustomed to seeing with some of the traditional players. So if you're trying to disrupt a sector, they're not saying, okay, incumbent A, incumbent B, incumbent C. This is what they do. So why are you not doing that? Some other regulators we speak to, that's what they do, right? Like they're used to a certain standard and they want you to do the same thing because that's easy for them to follow their checklist approach. The UK regulator is not like that. And then above beyond that, they have these like, I'll say offshoots, like the innovation project or the advice unit where you can go in and have sort of, you can play around, not literally, but and you can try your business model without being regulated, or you can get insight into how they might regulate you even before you do that, before the application stage. And the other thing that we take for granted in London is that there's a lot of expertise, not just on the fintech side, but the regulator. So they have the people that you speak to kind of understand what you're talking about. Like they've worked in banking, so they're not lost when you try to explain a concept, or you try to explain a concept at, let's say, at the infrastructure level. They have years of experience and they can follow you along. I find a lot of times in certain markets where the regulator isn't experienced in what you do, they can't understand why you're doing what you're doing, and that makes them do like knee-jerk conservative reactions, or they retreat back to the position that they're most comfortable with, and that makes it really difficult. So all things considered, yes, we have our challenges with FCA like everyone else, but having seen other regulators, oh man, if like Brexit's going to suck for a lot of FCA firms who've been spoiled by the UK regulator, and they have to start dealing with the European. It's not the European regulator's fault, but I'm not trying to be balanced by this. But if you walk into a country where there's 4 million people, and there's been like 2 firms that do what you do in the last 5 years, what are the odds that someone who's going to look at your application has worked in your sector? They're starting from scratch, right? And this poor person has to kind of take a definitive view on your business plan and approve it. Of course, they're going to be conservative and ask you weird questions and try to cover their ass, right? And that's not their fault. It's just a thing of structure.
Yeah, so it's the nature of the world, and I guess how new innovation kind of comes through, but it's slightly different when you're looking at different jurisdictions, I guess. And I kind of on that note, kind of moving on to Irena as well. So how would you say that the technology aspect within your company, how have you found that's been easier or slightly different with regards to using the ecosystem and savings?
So, coming from, I guess I came from a traditional finance background, and so I was like more like a newbie into fintech over the past like couple of years. And I think one of the things that has really had frustrated me before coming into this was just how not very engaging like a lot of existing financial products, particularly those that were built like by the incumbents, were in terms of like, especially trying to target the younger generation. I know like when I was working as a private wealth manager before doing Kashmir, one of the things I kept trying to encourage my firm to do was to embrace technology, because a lot of our clients were very much like much older, middle-aged, men, so where technology was just not part of their environment. So but yeah, so having sort of like moved into this, it's like it's played a huge part, because especially with the younger generation, where we've kind of grown up with technology, and we've grown up with basically having to manage everything on our phone, and and the fact that the ecosystem, particularly in the UK, has created an environment where it's very much easier to wake up one day and decide to create a financial product, because there are all these products like WealthKernel that exist to help you make it easier to build a financial product without having to go through all the bureaucracy that was involved before. So so that's kind of like how I found building my product so far.
Okay, so it's a very different dynamic from your traditional clients that you've been dealing with, but I guess you're finding it's a nicer, easier path to actually connect with, I guess, your kind of core base like millennials, etc.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks again for this, guys. I'm just going to ask the members of the audience, our kind of attendees who are viewing, if you've got any questions that you would like to present to our panels, if you could please just post them into the invitation box for questions, and obviously we can get those answered later on this afternoon. Yeah, so we'll get to those a little bit later on. So from your point again, Kate, I think we're kind of in this fintech 2.0 is what we've kind of classified ourselves in at the moment in terms of financial services. Where do you see things? I know it's quite hard to say. Where do you see things happening in the next 2 to 5 years? What do you see the plan is for Zazuu, and how do you think that will happen with what will happen with the ecosystem as well?
Yeah, thanks, Michaela. Yeah, fintech 2.0. I mean, who knows? These versions seems to kind of I don't know, these numbers just depending on who you speak to, some people think we're in fintech 3.0. But ultimately, the future from the way we see it, I definitely think open banking is a great initiative. And I think it's worth sort of talking about how we got here in the first place. I think globally, after the 2008 the financial system breakdown, I think the general public, or for the first time, customers sort of are suddenly aware of how much sort of unfairness is in the essentially the banking system, and we had new players coming into the industry to really kind of challenge the incumbents and say, do you know what, we can actually do better. And I think what's really changed and what we're sort of seeing now, even with regulators, but more so with sort of the new players that are coming in, is really brands and startup and businesses and entrepreneurs that are extremely customer centric. And this is what I think the future holds, or certainly this is what Zazuu believe the future is. We want to be, I mean, technology has always been improving and getting better and better and better and better. And that's been the history of fintech. And technology would always get better, but what I think organizations need to do a bit more work on is really changing our gaze and our perspective to the customer. Who are we serving? And really asking fundamental questions. So one of the questions that we ask at Zazuu, and what actually got us to the business model that we have today, is really, it's not how to build a better remittance company. Is really, how do we serve our customers in the best way possible? And from this question, we essentially came up with a business model, which ultimately means that we want to give our customers choice. And if you look at Monzo today, if you look at Revolut, if you look at some of the big players who are doing extremely well, what they've been able to incubate in their business model is a business model that sort of has choice in it. So for example, you've got a Monzo bank account. You could also get an insurance, or you could also send money to another country on Monzo. And actually, you're not using Monzo core banking, you're using TransferWise API in the hood. And this is sort of the collaborative effort I think open banking, of course, is going to bring to us, and open API as well is going to introduce into the ecosystem. So I think really the future is really sort of the consumer choice, of course, the consent-driven sort of atmosphere that we're in now, which I really think it's a good thing. I think more and more customers are becoming aware of the fact that we are the most important entity in the ecosystem. And I think that's pretty much what the open banking is saying as well, that customer data has power. So really the future really from our perspective is convenience, consent-driven, and choice for the customers.
So you're obviously putting the customer in the forefront there, and obviously the dynamicism of actually looking at the data that your consumers are kind of giving to you, thinking about it again, and then thinking, right, how can we make this technology even better for you and what you're trying to do? So thank you for that as well, Kay. Obviously we just touched about FinTech 2.0, maybe 3.0. Karan, we're also hearing FinTech 4.0. What's your kind of viewpoint, and where do you think that stands for yourself and your company at the moment?
I'll be honest, I'm not like, I know we talked was I'm not the most like the best guy at categorizing fintechs by numbers, so I don't want to talk like I'm an expert in that, so I'm probably gonna take a pass on this, but I can take a shot, but I really don't like talking about things that I'm not knowledgeable on. So
no, it's again because you're quite modular in your approach. From what I've seen of WealthKernel, it's not just you go in and it's a standard box of wealth management products. Can you just explain a little bit more how that would kind of work for your kind of potential clients?
Yeah, that I can talk about all day, right? I'm just not good at like the slang stuff. Like I'm kind of weird, even though we're like very advanced in some stuff. I don't spend a lot of time in like the mainstream fintech media. Like I don't read a lot of like the TechCrunch stuff. We just kind of keep our head down, we're just plumbers. Just kind of,
okay.
yeah. I think the modularity thing is important because how should I explain it? I look at like modules like core ingredients, right? And if you introduce a new ingredient or a new element, new things can be born out of that, right? You can't like forecast innovation. I don't believe that, right? I think if you introduce a new tool in the world, someone more clever than you or someone with a unique background, insight, or life experience will bring that new tool based on their personal experience or knowledge, and they will create something. They will shape a product that adds value. And I think that's what modularity brings to us. Like, well, more than just that, it allows sort of more flexibility on people can take that infrastructure and mold it into a new solution for a problem that you probably never encountered yourself, right? And that explains why there's a huge variety of customers that use our service. The second thing with modularity is you don't need to solve everything at once. You can build out little bit by little bit, and that takes a lot of pressure off of a startup to nail everything from day one, because you build one block to a certain standard, it's good, focus on the next block and the next block, and you don't need to sell someone like the whole house. You can just sell them a block, a door at a time, and that's fair because people won't be angry at you that you haven't provided everything in one shot. It makes the maintenance of it a lot easier as well, right? If the first thing we built is garbage, we can create a second version of that block, API it up to our core. Well, it's more microservices at this point than APIs. So like, let's not go into that world, but the microservicing of your infrastructure is what allows that. So that just means it takes a lot of pressure off us. We don't do everything right from day one. We don't have every architecture right from day one. We can kind of containerize it and focus on the bits that we do, get feedback, iterate. And we can also use other people's infrastructure. Like we have numerous companies that are API companies that we use because they're the experts in that space, and we don't need to become experts in their space overnight. We can use what they're good at through our pipes and deliver a really good service to our customers. And I think that sort of modularity means that people can specialize in what they're good at and use other people's infrastructure and push it upstream. And we spend a lot of time thinking about, like, where do we add value, and how can we do that, and what things should we build or buy, how can we partner, and APIs allow for that to happen much more seamlessly. I'm not sure if that's 4.0 or 3.0 or 1.0, but yeah.
Well, into the future. Okay, Ace, thank you very much for that. So the modularity and utilizing APIs is actually helping making stronger products that are more bespoke for your particular clients. Rather than going full bang with one big product, you're kind of tweaking it as you go along. And again, that kind of comes into play with the dynamicism of seeing what your consumers are appreciating and kind of re-improving it every time as you go along. So again, another benefit for open banking and where the system and the ecosystem is going. Yorena, from your perspective, obviously we've spoken about your background and the types of clients you're dealing with, the millennials, and I guess the kind of financial education you're giving to them through your product. How do you see things changing for them, or how do you see Kashmir changing as they grow older with their needs and their requirements as well? What do you see for the future?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, one of the things that we're seeing that we want to do over the next, I guess short to medium term is starting to look at how we can make sure that they're using Kashmir in a way that's actually sustainable for their bank accounts. So, so for example, obviously with things like PSD2, where we can start to do like affordability checks on the app. So basically, when a user signs up, so basically currently when a user signs up, they decide how much they want to put every month into their Kashmir wallet. So let's say like £100 every month. Whereas in the future, what we want to be able to do is that when they do sign up and connect their bank accounts, the app will be able to read, their spending and understand what's actually reasonable for them to be able to afford to put in their Kashmir wallet. So so doing affordability checks at the start to make sure that we are practicing what we preach in terms of we're making sure that people are actually only saving the amounts that they can reasonably afford. So that's one of the things that we're looking to integrate in the future, which we think will add a lot of value to our users. And then also looking at things like, what's their current spending like? So looking at if, for example, someone's spending so much money on I don't know, Uber Eats or delivery and stuff, and maybe they're trying to save up for something for Christmas, then the app will be able to tell them, okay, you're spending too much on XYZ. How about you cut that down and then redirect that money into your Kashmir wallet so you can hit your goal quicker. So it's things like that. So making the app a lot more interactive and fun to use rather than just the standard savings account you have with your bank that doesn't really do that. So yeah, and then sort of also looking at okay, what's their life journey. So a lot of our users right now are young. Some of them are still at university. Some of them are just graduating from university in their first job. But we see that they're gonna, as the years go by, they are gonna hopefully get promoted, get different jobs, maybe start a family, all of that kind of stuff. So we want to be able to look at the lifestyle that they want to live when they hit all these different milestones, and how can we use Kashmir to help them achieve those lifestyle goals. So for example, we can have users who in the next 5 years they're going to buy their first home. So how can they start saving up for the things, because buying a house is not just about the deposits and the all those fees. There's also furnishing and all that kind of stuff, things that you forget that you actually you need to buy a sofa, you need to buy a TV, all of that stuff. So yeah, so helping them sort of create pots for those those purchases for the future, or if it's maybe in the next 5-10 years they're going to get married, helping them maybe start to save up towards their honeymoon, maybe they wanted to go on a luxury resort or something like that. So yeah, so really looking at all the different milestones that they want to achieve over the next however long, and then help them start making those good financial decisions right now to save up towards achieving those.
Okay, so again, the kind of feedback, it's good that the app will be helping them and keeping them motivated for different goals, and it kind of evolves with them as they're growing as well. Yeah. I'm kind of conscious of a little bit of time here, guys, and thank you very much for your discussion so far. I'm just going to throw out one more last question to each of you to answer, and then I think we'll go to the audience because they've asked quite a few questions, which we can get to them. So from your perspective, what do APIs currently mean within your ecosystem of services, and how does that affect collaboration? Because each you're in slightly different fields. If you can just give me your viewpoint on that, and then we'll go to the audience as well. Apologies.
Is that do you want me to?
Apologies. Yeah, can we start with UK and then we'll follow down? Apologies.
Right. I mean, yes. As I've sort of mentioned before, for us, open API essentially allows us to be able to deliver the value for the customer. So one of the things that our customers care about is at the moment, they are able to see amazing rates and amazing deals on our platform. However, they're having to sort of leave our site, the app, to complete transaction elsewhere. And the biggest demand we've had so far is that customers would like to complete transaction in the same place. Now, in order for us to do that, there has to be a single standardized protocol for us to communicate and engage with all these other providers. So, for example, for us to be able to complete seamless transaction with TransferWise, we definitely need an API. However, we don't want, we could do it, but we don't want a separate API to communicate with all the 16 different providers we have. So we're moving towards the direction of one standardized approach. And I think this is sort of the future that we're looking at. The other things that we potentially would love to tap into is really using open banking API to enable seamless payment capturing from the Zazuu customers. And as I said, one of the things that we'd also love to do that we're actually championing is the idea of really incentivizing and rewarding customers for actually participating in transaction process as well, which there are a few companies that do that quite well, but for our demographic and the customers that we focus on, this is a huge value. It's a huge value for them. So I think overall, the convenience and speed of using open banking or open API, or if it's open remittance API, wherever it is, just enables us to deliver a seamless experience for our customers.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for that, Kay. And then we'll kind of throw that out to you as well, Karan.
Yeah, like API, like it's all about being APIs now for obvious reasons, right? Like like you can like I'm gonna repeat myself again in some spaces because APIs just means that you're no longer restricted to what you can and can't use, right? There's infinite amount of possibilities, combinations of services you can use. It allows really small companies to have the scale of an Amazon behind them or a Microsoft behind them in a very pedantic small area. It means that we can, like I'm trying to give examples of where APIs really, we can have access to global KYC checks through an API in real time. This infrastructure, if I was at Barclays, would have been a huge implementation, a huge contract. Instead, I just pay £1 a check to, on FIDE or Comply Advantage to do a global PEP check, right? That's functionality that overnight we get, right? You're a government official and you got elected, you become an MP somewhere, we know about it, right? Like, not because we have the infrastructure, but because we're plugged into Comply Advantage. And that type of flexibility, that ability to kind of be surgical in our infrastructure to get caught up to what a global firm would have, that's really, like that's the power of APIs, right? Like, focus on what you're good at, ability to plug into other people's infrastructure and scale that way, and then not have to worry about the thing above you, right? You focus on your value and let someone else take what you have, and it's like kind of like a relay in a weird way, and they build on top of what they do, and ultimately somewhere there's going to be a front end somewhere for a consumer, and maybe that's not an assumption I should make for much longer, but and a firm that's really good at UX will do the last mile distance, and we all do our part, and I think that's the power of APIs, is that it gives you that ability to scale really quickly, a lot of flexibility, and a scalable way to sell your services as well, right? Because you don't have to worry about UX interfaces, and security is slightly different. Security is different, in some ways more challenging actually, but yeah. So I wouldn't say it's a panacea for all challenges. I'd probably say, one thing I'd say is we probably made a mistake of being too API-ish in some ways. APIs are great, but in some mundane things, a very simple, boring UX interface actually does it a little bit better because it enables people who aren't programmers to solve simpler problems. So I'd say those of you who are, like, I believe in APIs, but I would say, horses for courses, right? Don't just API the shit out of everything for the sake of it. There's other things that can be done sometimes just by email or just SFTP files. It's just, there's elements that you want to pick and choose what you do, but or front ends can do better. So definitely APIs is the way forward, but don't be, don't be closed-minded to some of the older ways of doing stuff because you can move faster in some instances.
So for scale, APIs are definitely the way forward in terms of helping you kind of grow. But again, sometimes old school methods can also kind of help there, I guess is the thing from Karan. And I guess for yourself, Joanna, how does it affect you? And then after this answer, we'll just go to the audience.
Yeah, no, I mean, to echo what Karan said, definitely to help you scale, it's definitely very beneficial. But then I think also it also helps in terms of, driving innovation, driving competition within the industry, because now that like a huge, guess what you consider as a barrier to entry has kind of been lifted through APIs, it makes it easier for new entrants to come in, so that it's not just the same old companies, sort of like, the same old incumbents just doing stuff and not really serving their end customers. So yeah, so I think for me, like the whole idea of it helping to drive innovation, helping to make things that would have seemed impossible for a lot of companies, within easy reach, I think it's very important. So, and that's kind of how we're approaching it at Kashmir. So for us, we try to be as, I guess, lean as possible, and make sure that like what is the quickest, easiest route to achieving a certain goal. And with the fact that like we've got like different open banking APIs that exist, and definitely helps us achieve that.
Okay, no, thank you very much for your viewpoint on that. So again, we're just seeing how great it is in terms of accessibility and the whole ecosystem. It seems like everyone's going to build to make everything better for each other, driving the competition and ultimately hopefully driving down prices, which makes everything better for the consumer, who again is a person we're trying to help, which is slightly different from how things have been for the past, I don't know, decades, I would say. So all great, seeing the innovation being driven by the people who ultimately benefit from it, I guess.
Like, I'll give it, if you don't mind, if you're in the audience and you haven't pieced together, like I was just thinking about our different business models, but I'm just going to freestyle this a little bit here. But through APIs, you can take, let's say, I don't know you like this, so I hope I don't step on your toe, Irma. But let's say you're shopping using the Kashmir app, and you're buying, I don't know, a Louis Vuitton handbag, yeah. And for instance, instead of the handbag, you want to buy Louis Vuitton stock, and you're somewhere in Nigeria, right? You can use K's app to fund your Louis Vuitton app purchase in dollars, which is listed on the New York and the French Stock Exchange through the API through the Kashmir app. Our API lets you actually buy the stock on the stock exchange, settle it, and then our API tells the Kashmir app the value of your purchase in Louis Vuitton, right? That's three crazy things that happen all through APIs and probably can be linked up in a matter of two, like putting aside the regulations and all that stuff. But the plumbing there to do that is maybe weeks or months away, right? And we all kind of do different things in strength, right? And you combine those three things differently, and you create an app that lets you buy the shares of the company that you're shopping at overnight.
And then I guess if
that's actually a feature we're looking to launch in the future. So
like we don't move money between countries. K's app does, right? Like we're all about sending money between us and the stock exchange.
You're right, completely different sectors, but again, a lot of collaboration can be done between the three as well. So thank you very much for that analogy and for bringing everything together for us, Karan. I'm just going to double check. So we are kind of running up to the point now where we would ask some questions which we have from the audience. The first one is from a gentleman called David Lewis. I'm not sure this. Okay, are you seeing any demand from the general public to use Bitcoin or similar as a payment currency? There's been a lot in the news recently. PayPal's now accepting Bitcoin. Is that something you guys are hearing as well, or has it not really touched your relevant kind of stream so far?
Well, I can kind of give a quick one on that. So I don't know how much the audience know about what's been going on in Nigeria recently, the last few weeks. There was an organization who decided to kind of support the NSAS campaign. And then initially they were sort of using a traditional payment infrastructure. You know, you send money to the bank account. People all over the world were sort of donating money using the normal sort of traditional way. And for some reason, the government shut down their accounts, and then the next day they basically spin up a Bitcoin account, and they started receiving funds, and there was no disruption to that. So to answer the question, I think yes, there are. I think more now more than ever, there's now more demand for Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies. I personally know a lot of people who, especially in Africa, are trying to move some of their local currency into something more stable, and they are definitely considering, cryptocurrencies. So there is some demand, but I can't give you numbers and stats.
No, it's a good to just get an overall view. And for yourself, Karan and Yorella, is that something you've seen requested for, or is it as an asset class that people are asking for at the moment?
Yeah, like a lot of Sorry, go ahead first.
All right. I think so for us, not really. I think with to Kay's point, I think with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and all that, I think it's more prevalent in like emerging markets rather than Western markets. In my opinion, anyway, from what I've seen, I don't really see, particularly in Western markets, I don't really see there being like a huge uptake in in cryptocurrency for, I don't know, maybe like the next 5-10 years, because I think just from speaking to people I know within my network, people are still a bit not wary, but you know how it is. Yeah, it's still hard to get to grips to it, and you know how human beings are. Like we need to trust something first, especially when it comes to money. There's a lot of trust that's required before tapping into that. But I definitely see a lot of opportunity like within the emerging market space.
Okay, thank you for that. And Karan, have you seen any demand for this?
I mean, it's kind of outside my core expertise, but we do get a lot of demand from companies that want to start up like cryptocurrency investment things. We steer clear of it. I think like we're not experts in it, so we try not to stretch ourselves too far, and it's like a regulatory minefield because a lot of the times the use cases is when something happens where you need to be outside of the government framework or whatever. That doesn't bode well for like regulatory matters. And so, we don't. So for that reason, we don't. And also, it's just we're a custodian, so that comes with a lot of responsibility. So you need to know exactly what you're doing, and that's just not a space that I'm knowledgeable enough to offer services to at the moment. So I'm a spectator at best.
Okay, so maybe change in the future, but for now, it's not something within you're looking at. Another question from a gentleman called David. How are you attracting customers to your platforms? Using traditional methods, or what's your kind of go-to point for getting more customers?
So for us, it's because we're B2C. It's mainly through social media. So particularly Instagram and Twitter. So because our audience are young millennial Gen Zs, women who are very active on Twitter and Instagram, we just go to where they are. And also because we're a very visual brand, Instagram particularly. So right now about 40% of our members come from Instagram. And then about 30% of them come from Twitter, and then 20% from word of mouth, and then the remaining 10 is just from like other sources. But yeah, so it's mainly just like looking at where our audience they reside on social media, and then we try and make sure that we're as visible as we can on there.
Okay, thank you for that. For Karan and
go on, Karan.
Go ahead. Let's gotta screw this up, don't we? We just basic SEO. Like our buyers are usually there's not that many. We don't really do a lot of advertisement because it's not every day someone starts a fintech firm that comes to us. So we try to be word of mouth. People in our circles usually point people towards us as like a specialty infrastructure provider, or just Googling buying AdWords.
Okay, Ace. And as for yourself as well, Kay?
Yeah, very similar to Reina actually. It's mainly social media for now. We experiment with working with influencers mainly on Instagram. We've explored other platforms as well. But we're also testing other channels. Pay per click and all the usual stuff. So, but for now it's mainly influencer marketing, and we are seeing some pretty impressive results.
Okay, good to hear. So Instagram and Twitter leading the way forward for you guys as well. Going back to a different question from my called Stephen. Open banking. I've seen a number of conflicting surveys regarding the take-up of open banking. Do you think this is caused by an unclear business model and unclear target market? A little bit controversial there. Sorry, if we can start with Kay. Sorry, we'll go back around again.
Well, I have to be brutally honest. Open banking is still a thing that we are trying to fully understand. I think it's relatively it's still a new innovation. It's only been really fully effective in 2019 really. It from a business perspective and from our perspective, as a pretty much an very early stage startup, it's a great way to really access data that we wouldn't necessarily have access to without that. I mean, you have banks holding all these sort of transactional data that we just wouldn't be able to have access to. And from a payment capturing perspective, it's definitely cheaper as well. So from that perspective, it's great. I think I could argue from a customer perspective as well. It's nice to be able to sort of move from one provider to the other and access much better tailored service. But again, it's a kind of new innovation that we're still really just learning more about, really.
That's boring as well. Okay, and from your perspective, Karen?
Yeah, I think it's you can't judge it by the first year. If I had to bet, I'd bet big that it's going to be disruptive. I am big on a personal firm. We're an AISP and a PISP. It's the first iteration. There's clearly some flaws in that. Wait till the second iteration comes out. It's a massive. I think you don't want to be betting against open bank right now. I can tell you how we've looked at infrastructure. There's going to be some empires that will fall on the back of this. I can tell you that as well. The power of data, the speed, the fact that you own your own data, the fact that the payment fees, people don't realize how much. Well, maybe Kashmir, you do, but people don't realize how much merchants just get ripped off by card providers. And if you empower these merchants, believe me, and merchants, we've all been there, right? Like the cash merchants. Give it a few years, it's going to be hugely disruptive. And I give a lot of credit to the government for forcing a standard to change behaviors. And at least it's not easy to change stuff. People just think you snap your fingers and the rails and all the stuff just changes overnight. But if you evaluate this just based on 18 months of being in production,
yeah, around that.
Yeah, just if you kind of look back to ATMs, how long it became before people felt really comfortable using them for everything. This is going to grow at an exponential rate, not linear. 3 years from now, I reckon we'll be doing, if I had to guess, 4,000 or 5,000% amount of transactions that are happening now. And it might be the fact that the many people in the room here forget, we're the millennials. We're going to get kind of knocked out by the younger generation who will be more comfortable with open banking. We kind of get, I think, sometimes a bit confused about how open banking works on a mobile first way of doing stuff. I think the younger people coming through, they'll just expect that, why carry the physical card in the first place? That seems a bit redundant. That just, I think for a lot of people who are used to paying with their phone, that'll be natural for them. So, and once you have that, that'll unlock a lot of them. And there's just practical things that they just, okay, this is a huge program. The people that designed it, they will iterate. There's some flaws that they didn't expect and no one expect. Everyone knows about it. They have these forums that you feed it back, reoccurring payments, refunds. There's 3 or 4. People exaggerate, but there's these 4 main issues that make it really difficult to scale. And once they touch those things, it's going to take off. And you should expect to see signs. My view is that if you go to a firm and they say, there's a maybe they don't do this here, but they do definitely do it in Canada, where if you pay with a credit card, you pay 5% more. You know, people say if you pay with open banking, it'll be less. Just because from a merchant's perspective, why give over 2%? Like, why would you do that when you have thin margins? And that's going to change behaviors. So I'm a big proponent of open banking.
Okay, so we think exponential adoption from your perspective, and then again, Joanna, what do you think as well?
I mean, I think the guys have pretty much covered my views on it. I think, you know, it's still too early to tell. You know, it's only been, you know, it hasn't been that long. It's only been a few years, but there is definitely more scope for growth, and particularly what Karen said about, you know, the younger generation would be a driving force for this, because they're the ones who really grew up with technology. They were literally born with technology in their hands. Whereas, you know, us who are slightly older, we do remember how things were before technology was like huge. So, you know, for the, I guess, for the millennials and so, you know, slightly older millennials, a lot of us still maybe are a bit distrustful of you know, the fintech wave, or like, you know, with the challenger banks. Like, I know a lot of people who are still, a lot of people my age, and I'm 28, who are very distrustful of challenger banks, and people only really use it for like for example, their Monzo account to just be for a spending card rather than their main bank account, because they don't feel like ready to putting all their salary into a bank that there's no branches. So it's actually very interesting that we say like millennials are very like we adopt technology quickly, but do we really? Because, you know, but I guess it's because we grew up with having Barclays and HSBC and all that, like, you know, physical banks and stuff like that. So it's going to take a bit of time for us to really get to that point where we would be fully trusting of like challenger banks, for example. But the younger generation grew up with everything on digital, so they would adopt it a lot easier. But yeah, so yeah, he's going to be one of our future adopters, I guess.
Yes, most definitely.
But yeah,
I guess no. Like with life now, we have pre-COVID and post-COVID. There'll be a new normal, which I guess, like little gentlemen like this over here, they'll be adapting things straight away. Thank you very much, guys, for all your time. Thanks for joining the panel and speaking with us today and giving us your insights. That's all these great questions. I'm just going to pass back to Nzube, and I think we're going to go to some closing remarks, I believe. Oh, yeah.
Yes, we are. Sorry, my mic was stuck there. So thank you, Michaela, for moderating an excellent panel. I'm going to hand over to Dallin, my colleague, for closing remarks in a second. But I just wanted to say, you know, lots of insight. Really appreciate the panel sharing insights and conversations and about your respective businesses and your thoughts on the wider sector. And thanks to the audience for being patient and also sharing their questions. And as Black History Month 2020 comes to a close, I wanted to just highlight that we are opening a new chapter at the BCS, and we're doubling down on our commitment to promote the practice of inclusion and diversity on an ongoing basis by making IT good for society from the inside out. We're working internally at the BCS as well as with other member groups. There's a new website that has been launched that has a dedicated space for diversity and inclusion, and it features lots of commitments that we are making in this area. For instance, this week, we announced a new bursary in partnership with Coding Black Females to provide more opportunities for Black female developers to develop themselves, and 50 women would be eligible for the bursary and free BCS membership. Another initiative that's also in the pipeline is a special interest group called Embrace that will focus on racial diversity within the IT sector. So a lot going on, and no coincidence, we have an all-star Black panel today, really diverse. And I'll hand over to Dallin for closing remarks. Thanks again, and over to you, Dallin.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Nzube, and thank you to all our great speakers, our panelists. That was really insightful in terms of an area that certainly I know little or nothing about. I know a little bit more now, so thanks to you. Also, we have an audience who've got an amount of knowledge in your area, as you can see from the questions. And this is very representative of BCS in general. We're over 60,000 people in BCS, and we represent all sorts of IT related interests. In fact, in BCS, we've got not only a whole load of specialist groups, such as the financial services specialist group, but also we've got a whole load of branches, physical branches, like the two that I represent and Nzube and I represent. They are Central London branch and also North London branch. Great groups of people, wonderful networking opportunities and so on. And what we're trying to do is to have a whole load of initiatives and encourage people to join us. So please do encourage your colleagues to join BCS as well, and certainly to partake of more webinars like this. Very briefly, what we're trying to do is to major on things like marketing and publicity, which we really need to do better. Innovation, which people like Nzube do very well, and so does David Lewis, who was one of the people who asked a question there. Networking, which we used to do somewhat better when we could meet people face to face, but we've all had to adapt, haven't we? Collaboration, which we definitely want to do between groups, with you and your groups and so on, and your organizations. And education, raising awareness about all of the issues like the ones you've been talking about today. So please keep up the great work. Keep on doing things with Nzube and with BCS. And I'd like to add my personal thanks to you all for a great evening. So thank you very much. And Nzube, back to you to close off, I guess.
That's pretty much it. Thank you. So we're going to end the recording and wish you a good evening. Thanks. Bye, everyone.